Hello Summoners, and welcome to another episode of ProGuides Best Champions to Main, now on patch 10.11. These champions are all about high performance with low ban rates that are unlikely to get nerfed in the immediate future. The most reliable picks in the game that are the most worthy of investing time in. Now before we get started though, our question of the day is, what's the hardest you've ever carried? Let us know your answers in the comments below, or hop into our Discord to discuss it with your fellow community members. We have all kinds of conversations happening there daily. We also have an equally shiny new subreddit that we're filling with resources and discussions, so definitely check that out as well. Now, without further delay, we'll get right into it. Coming in as our number one top laner to main for patch 10.11 is Quinn. She's a ranged marksman assassin hybrid capable of harassing most of the melee inhabitants of top lane with ease. Her Q's blind prevents true retaliation and gives her time to get some free damage in before her enemy can strike back. Her W grants her vision all around her, revealing any enemies lurking in bushes who might have been trying to ambush her. If things get close quarters, Quinn's E lets her vault off an enemy to damage them and create space for her to make an escape. Quinn's ultimate is the other half of what makes her good, as the mobility offered by switching into Valor form and zooming around the map lets Quinn apply pressure to every lane rather than just being isolated into the top lane. Our second pick for top laners to main is Teemo. Now, I know he's notorious for being infuriating to play against, but the value of a good Teemo cannot be overstated. Like Quinn, he's got some of the most oppressive lane bullying of any top laner, and it's hard to deal with him in the laning phase without any help. Teemo's Q blind does a pretty good chunk of damage as well, and of course it blinds the enemy and stops them from getting any auto attacks in on him. His W's movement speed burst is an excellent tool that can be used for either escaping or running an enemy down, and his E's poison, augmenting his auto attacks, helps whittle opponents down. Teemo's true value, however, lies in his objective control. A proactive Teemo who shrooms up objectives before they come up is a successful Teemo, and he'll make it an enormous chore for enemies to approach anything. Our third top lane champion to main on 10.11 is Tryndamere. While Tryndamere does have a 4% ban rate, it's still not nearly as much of a contested pick as other meta top laners, so he's worth putting some time into. Tryndamere is a split pusher and a duelist, and his Fury passive's free crit chance it offers plays no small part in helping him create leads for himself. Once he has a lead, he's hard to put back behind due to his Q healing him for such a significant amount of his max Fury. His W also lowers enemy attack damage and makes chasing them down much easier since it can lower movement speed as well. Tryndamere's E can either be used to engage or disengage, but either way, the spin is nice mobility. The trademark Tryndamere ability, however, is his ultimate, the Don't Die button. With one simple button press, Tryndamere is incapable of being killed for a few seconds, giving him ample time to finish off a kill or objective before he goes down. Here are those top lane builds in case you missed anything. Our first jungle pick for 10.11 is Hecarim. His recent buffs are looking pretty promising, and he's ready to charge back into the spotlight. Hecarim is generally played as a high-speed bruiser, since his passive grants him more damage the faster he's going. His Q spins his glaive around him, slashing at any nearby enemies, and once Conqueror is active, he can activate his W to become a whirlwind of healing and death. Hecarim's E gives him a boost in movement speed to work up to a charging attack. This is his main ganking tool, letting him wrap around an enemy, come in from behind, and knock them forward before turning back with his ult to fear them for even more CC. Kindred is the second jungle pick for 10.11's list. Riot buffed Zeal items for marksmen, but didn't mention Kindred in any of the notes for the changes, so she's flying below the radar, benefiting from the increased movement speed and attack speed. Kindred's passive gives her marks on the map to hunt down, and while she collects these marks, she receives stat bonuses. As the game progresses and Kindred collects more and more marks, they become harder and harder to obtain, as they're placed on more contested neutral objectives. Her Q lets her evade attacks and kite enemies while also buffing her own damage output. This movement lets her make her way across the map quickly and efficiently, especially when paired with her W's zone, lowering the Q cooldown so she can hop around more. Kindred's E is a point-and-click slow that also does execute damage on the third hit. This is a great ability to have, as it synergizes with her ultimate's Immortality Zone to let her win almost any low-health standoff as soon as it pops. All in all, Kindred is very fun, but she is difficult to execute on well in a consistent way. So if Kindred piques your interest, head over to ProGuides.com and one of our coaches will help break down everything you need to do to start rolling games over with her. Ivern will be our third jungler for 10.11's best champions to main. Before we get into what makes him so good, keep in mind that you will still start his build with a Hunter's Talisman, even though it's not displayed in the lineup. He's just one of those champions that doesn't benefit much from a completed jungle item, so you just end up selling the talisman later on. Anyway, with ADCs making a relative comeback, Ivern's supportive playstyle is more valuable than ever, helping keep carries alive and well. Ivern has a somewhat unique playstyle since he doesn't actually fight his camps. Instead, his passive allows him to just click on a camp and let his Grove do the rest of the work. He just has to come back and claim it to free the monsters for his golden experience. This lets him have a strong method of ganking lanes with his Q's root while his Groves are charging, as well as making him an effective counter jungler. Ivern's W conjures up bushes to obscure vision, and his E's shield is incredibly strong since it also explodes and slows targets around it. His ultimate, Daisy, does a ridiculous amount of damage, and her knockup is invaluable in fights. And the jungle builds are up on your screen here to take a peek at. Our first pick in the mid lane is Nocturne. Nocturne is an excellent mid laner right now, with his Tiamat Rush build helping him clear out waves quickly alongside his Q's Claw skill shot. Once the wave is cleared, Nocturne is free to roam to his side lanes with his ultimate and gank from afar before the enemy realizes what's happening. W Spell Shield helps him stick to targets, and his Tethered Fear gives him the advantage in most straightforward trades. As per usual with these Tiamat Rush champions, you don't want to complete your Hydra straight away since it doesn't give you a huge power spike, and you're mostly just after the wave clear anyway. Just sit on it until it's the last thing left in your build, then you can finish it off. The second mid laner for 10.11 is Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz is a long-ranged artillery mage capable of blowing up team fights and establishing strong zones of control. His Q is a far-reaching skill shot that splits left and right at the end of its travel path, letting him attack from interesting angles. His W tears a rift in the void that procs twice, letting him wave clear with ease. This ability is also especially potent when combined with E's knockup, as landing the knockup and following up with the W basically ensures a proc of Vel'Koz's 3-spell true damage passive. After Vel's whittled a target down, or even if it's just a teamfight breaking out, he can fire his ultimate's laser and shred every enemy in sight, single-handedly blasting teamfights. Rumble is our third mid lane pick for this list, and he's been doing really well for a long time. Rumble is one of the best teamfighting champions in the game if you know how to pilot his unique heat passive alongside his positioning needs. Instead of mana, Rumble has heat, and when he's above 50 heat, when he casts a spell, it gains a hefty bonus effect that amplifies whatever the ability already does. Rumble's Q Flamethrower gains a ton of extra damage and is pretty difficult to outtrade, especially if it's paired with his W shield and movement speed. Rumble's E is a harpoon launcher that slows enemies, and it slows for even more when cast above 50 heat. But Rumble's ultimate is what makes him such a monster, as the line of damage over time and slowing will completely melt anyone unfortunate enough to stand on it for more than 1 second. Combine that damage over time with a well-placed flamethrower, and the teamfight is basically won. Now here are those mid lane builds for you one more time. The first bot laner on our list for 10.11 is Kog'Maw. With late game scaling AD carries doing much better for themselves, it's only natural that Kog'Maw rises to the top along with them to remind everyone that he's one of the finest hyper carries in the game. Kog'Maw's Q is an armor and magic resist shredding skill shot that makes his already potent auto attacks even more deadly, especially when he pops his W for the additional damage, range, and the attack speed. The trade-off for this power is that Kog is one of the most fragile champions in the game, but he can somewhat combat this with his E's slowing field. Once targets try to step up to Kog'Maw, get shredded, and realize their mistake, they'll often try to turn and run for their lives. But thanks to Kog'Maw's ultimate having enormous range and execute damage, they're just consigning themselves to death. His artillery strikes hit hard, and he can get a good number of them out in rapid succession to clean up a team fight. Yet another late game hyper carry AD carry, Jinx takes her spot as the number 2 bot lane carry for 10.11's best champions to main. As a rapid fire missile slinging terror, Jinx is formidable in any game where she's allowed to make it out of lane intact. Her Q's versatility between the minigun's attack speed and the rocket launcher's AoE dominance lets her handle situations as she needs to. And if it seems like she's being pursued, her W zap carries a hefty slow along with it. If the zap isn't enough, she can resort to her E's traps, keeping enemies locked down long enough for her to either make her escape or gun them down. While the main draw of Jinx is her incredible synergy with rockets and Runan's Hurricane, her ultimate is nothing to scoff at either. Jinx's global ultimate lets her have presence anywhere on the map, and if an enemy is low, no matter where they are, they need to be afraid. Ashe is our third bot lane carry for 10.11. Whereas other strong ADCs right now are popular for their damage output, Ashe is more focused on bringing utility to the table on her team. But the thing is, she doesn't even sacrifice that much for it. Ashe's Q gives her a huge boost in attack speed, making up the differential of inherent damage between her and other AD carries. Her W's volley is great lane poke and wave clear, and the slow it applies helps her immensely in chase scenarios. Ashe's E Hawkshot is incredibly underrated, but having the ability to fire a global projectile that gives vision anywhere on the map is super valuable, especially when you know how to track an enemy jungler with it and foil their attempts to gank your allies. Ashe's ultimate is a global stun arrow, and it's one of the best engage options in the entire game, especially in the marksman pool of champions. Being able to pull the trigger on fights gives her an amount of agency over her games few other marksmen can claim, and almost any team comp can benefit from having her in it. And here are those bot lane builds for you, so check them out. The first support we recommend on 10.11 is Galio. Galio's kind of been out of the spotlight for a while now, but he's no less valuable since he received his buffs earlier this season. He's tanky for free, synergizes well with support items, and his utility is phenomenal. The damage he does early on with his passive smashing auto attack combined with his Q's tornado is more than enough to carry him through the laning phase, and late game his W's taunt zone can keep team fights tied up long enough for his team to obliterate the enemies. Galio's E is a dashing punch that lets him get the drop on people and start fights, which helps him make crucial picks before team fights around objectives. The main selling point for Galio, however, is his ultimate. With the power to follow up on fights such a long way away, the map pressure Galio offers is extremely useful for his team, and he's a great pick in the current meta. Rakan is our second support pick for 10.11. Rakan is a playmaking support who excels at making fights happen and dancing his way around them to help his allies. In laning phase, Rakan has a mild bit of poke and sustain with his Q skill shot, damaging enemies and healing allies. His W lets him dash forward and knock up any enemies in his landing zone, which is an amazing ability for getting a good fight going. If things are getting hairy, his E lets him dash to an ally and shield them, or he can use it to surprise enemies by shielding his ally, Wing in, then shielding back to the safety of his ally. His ultimate gives him a huge boost in movement speed, and while he's running, anyone he touches is taunted into chasing him. This ability is frequently used in conjunction with his W to let him round up enemies and set them up for a big knockup. Once they're CC'd, his team can follow up and delete them all. Taric is our third support for 10.11's best champions to main. Taric is a tanky enchanter who has a unique aptitude for helping protect his backline and frontline simultaneously. Taric's W Bastion links him to an ally, granting them a shield and a portion of Taric's armor. From there, Taric can cast his spells for both himself and his Bastioned ally. His Q is a heal that doesn't do much in and of itself. When combined with his passive, lowering its cooldown, he can rattle off a lot of them in rapid succession, and they definitely add up. His E is a linear stun that can lock down multiple targets after a delay, which is what makes him particularly good at peeling the backline and the frontline at the same time. Aside from just the stun though, his ultimate makes him and any adjacent allies invincible for a few seconds. And just like every other spell, his ulti gets cast on his Bastioned ally as well, so it's much easier to apply it to the whole team. Timing Taric's ultimate can be hard, but if you can get it down, it's an excellent tool to have in your arsenal. And finally, those support build paths are up for you one more time. Thanks for watching, guys. We hope you enjoyed this video along with the rest of our patch 10.11 series. Once again, let us know in the comments when you carried the hardest so that we can hit you with the hot, fresh heart react. We really do love hearing from you guys. See you guys next time. Good luck on the Rift and wash your hands.